We are here for episode 2 of the Creators of Color podcast. Thanks so much for listening. My name is Avi Gandhi. Our mission is to inspire and enable a new generation of content creators of color. If you like what you hear, please support us by leaving a comment or a review, and especially sharing with your friends. We're available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. This episode, we're talking to Stro. You can find him on Instagram, directed by Stro, S-T-R-O. He is the co-founder of a company called Room 1041, and they produce content on behalf of some of the biggest content creators in the world. I mean, if you have watched YouTube, at some point, you have seen their content, and you have seen something that Stro has directed. He's also a person of color. He's also of Vietnamese descent. He's Vietnamese-Canadian. And so I'm really excited to talk to Stro about his background, about his experience. Well, let's get into it. Stro, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us on Creators of Color.
Let's go. Avi, thank you so much for having me. This is so cool.
I'm excited to have you. We've worked together for a couple years now on and off different projects, but you're like the guy in digital media. You do so many of the biggest creators' content. You've been doing it for years. You know, people like Lele Pons and Twan and Rosanna Pansino and Twan, who's an international star. It's funny, we were just talking before we got on, and you said you're a little nervous to talk about this stuff because I think the quote used is you're kind of disconnected from your roots, and I just want to start there. Like, what made you say that?
So, well, Avi, I moved out here when I was 5 to Canada. My parents were refugees from the Vietnamese War. So I was born in a refugee camp in Indonesia. Moving to Canada, there wasn't a lot of Vietnamese people, so I didn't really have a community. I didn't really have a tribe. So I was definitely a little lost growing up because I didn't know where I belonged. Because when I came home, it would be, me speaking Vietnamese, and we would have our little thing. And then when I would go out into the world, it was just really interesting because I just grew up with a group of in elementary school Somalians and Arabs, and then going into high school, it was Persians and Jamaicans.
Were those different neighborhoods, or like did you move around, or was that all kind of the same?
Yeah, we moved around a lot. And there's a lot of different schools, just a lot of different communities, and I would just really absorb in their culture because that was what I was exposed to.
Were you also around other Vietnamese refugees who had moved to Canada, or other people from Indonesia, or was it?
Eventually, like in high school, like I've met a few Vietnamese people, but even by then, I just couldn't relate to them because I just grew up so different. Even having dinner with their families, it was like, okay, I'm not coming off as polite because I didn't know the polite ways to like have dinner and have conversations because I was grown so differently.
While you were kind of around all of these folks from other parts of the world, were you also around a lot of white people? Like, would you say that the culture that you had absorbed growing up into high school was white Canadian?
So eventually it did get into the white Canadian world where I started listening to punk rock.
Who are we talking about? What kind of bands? Tell me the bands.
The classic Panic of the Disco, 4 Years Strong.
Nice.
Blessed by a Broken Heart. I'm not sure anyone knows this. It's also like a lot of Canadian bands, Canadian rock bands.
I mean, the first concert I ever went to in high school was Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco.
Oh my
Yellow
God.
Card, Starting Line.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's a great show. Yeah.
And my previous friends didn't get it. Like my Jamaican friends, my Persian friends. Like this, I was just like obsessed. Like this music was so awesome. So I started making white friends, going to concerts, and
so through music, through art, you were in one kind of melting pot almost, and then kind of moved into a different cultural group through music. Did that affect kind of your creativity? Is that kind of the start of how you got into becoming a creator? How did you kind of bridge that gap?
Avi, you'll never guess. So I wanted to become a teacher. Growing up, Boy Meets World was my biggest inspiration.
Nice.
Specifically Mr. Feeney, how he changed the generation and like walk through life with these young kids and impacting their lives in a big way. I wanted to impact uh, people's lives as well. So I wanted to become a teacher. And as a bonus, I knew my parents would be proud. But in between then, I was doing filmmaking as a hobby. I would film my friends free running and making them do things, tell jokes. And then people started seeing my work and they wanted to hire me for things. So I would go out filming a nightclub. I would go out filming weddings and stuff. I came from a small town, so everyone knew of me really quickly. And people were just calling me and booking me like crazy. And then at a certain point, I'm like, okay, do I stop going to school and pursue this hobby, or do I keep becoming a teacher and make my parents happy? It was a no brainer at the time. I want to do my hobby. I'm happy doing it. I'm filming people. I'm
Yeah.
meeting a lot of new people. So I pursued that. I told my parents.
How did they react to that?
They didn't believe it. They didn't believe me for so long, Avi. Even when I moved to LA, 4 years down the line, they still didn't believe me. And then I think it was a few years ago, we're like, wow, like you really like did something with your passion.
Like they didn't realize, or they didn't believe that you could make
Yeah.
a living and be successful making.
Videos. Yes.
Did they try to stop you? Did they, or like, was it a fight? Was it an argument? Or were they kind of like, do what you want, but this is silly?
There's such supportive parents, but they didn't believe the career. Up until 2018, they've always told me to like, all right, so it's kind of not working out for you. You should move back home and get a
Right.
job. I'm
Right.
like, that's so crazy. That's so crazy. I'm not doing that.
Did your parents want you to, integrate more, to like sort of fit in more with like the local culture? Were they very strict about, school and like getting good grades? And
I think again, this is where like I drift apart from my community because I hear stories about my Asian counterparts, their parents saying, being super strict, but my parents weren't super strict. Why they weren't super strict is because they were working all the time.
right.
I mean, they were like fresh immigrants coming to America, just trying to make ends meet. My parents were working in a nail salon Monday through Saturday, even sometimes Sunday. So again, I had to like learn a lot by myself.
I mean, that's a really impressive work ethic. And I know you have a very impressive work ethic yourself. Do you think that you kind of absorbed some of that from them? Did you have to help them at the nail salon or anything like that?
100%. I've learned a lot of my grit, my perseverance, and my work ethic from my parents. Absolutely. Even though my parents weren't strict, we were like very reserved. So just giving opinions um, and being quiet was like the main thing in my household. So coming into this industry, in the film industry, I have to be very opinionated and
Yeah,
very,
you're a director. You got to tell everyone what to do,
I got to
right?
tell everyone.
Yeah.
So that's a skill like I had to like really, really try to, learn and figure out.
This is a good opportunity for us to transition to talking about your career as a creator, because you're a creator in many ways, right? You have your own social media following. People, the internet knows who you are, but your biggest kind of calling card is that you are an accomplished director working with a lot of these superstar creators. You have to kind of get them to mesh with your creative vision, but your creative vision has to mesh with theirs. I'm sure there's a lot of friction in that process. You weren't actually raised to have that much friction, so you had to learn how to deal with that. How did you do that?
Influencers have big personalities, and I would say a lot of emotions. So when we do clash, I'll always try to make it work with them, whether it be filming the shot twice or filming an ending twice, where there's a lot of times where we have to do that, where we see it in post. And then from there, we've developed the trust. Okay, Stro was right here. Like it flowed really well. It's a little bit funnier. Sometimes I would be wrong, but I would have like really good spirits about it. So we've just developed that like friendship from there.
It seems like the sort of cultural experience you had growing up, where your parents were like, don't make waves, don't like push, you don't want to start, you don't want to create friction. It seems like you've sort of taken that and kind of made it useful from like the perspective of working with these big and emotional personalities. And so you're not trying to make waves. You're not saying it's my way or the highway. You're really working with them as a partner. And that allows you to build that trust. That's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. You're starting to become a therapist, Avi. I mean, I'm like connecting the dots. Like, yeah, that's right. That's so true.
Once you've spent enough time in therapy, like I have, then you could start to.
So I moved to America with like $1,600 American. Go to this like really bummy motel with like a bunch of cockroaches. And the only way I could think of making money is putting ads on Craigslist. And that's how I met Steven Spence. He wanted to do a music video at the time. So he messaged me to create a music video for him. Even though I was so broke, even to a point where I even couldn't pay for gas, I told Spence that I'm going to do this music video for you for free. We crushed that music video. We ended up becoming best friends. And he had a career change during that time too, where he wanted to be a creator. I started filming his sketch content, and it started blowing up. Everyone wanted to collaborate with Spence. So we would be on this collaboration. We would go to 1600 Vine. I'm not sure if you know 1600 Vine.
Yeah, this is like the legendary apartment complex where all the internet stars lived for like a couple of years in the mid 10s.
And I would come to this building with Spence, and people started to realize that, hey, this guy Stro is not filming with iPhones. He's filming with a professional camera, and he's directing everybody to make their sketch content. Everyone started to use me. I was the first person to introduce traditional filmmaking in the Vine social scene. And I was very lucky to do so because during that time, there was so many people in the traditional space that could have done it, but I was just lucky to, be in the right time, in the right place. And interesting fact, I've taught so many influencers how to edit. I've taught.
So you became a teacher after all.
Yeah. Yes.
I love that.
I didn't even think about that.
Okay, so you have had a ton of success now working with a lot of these creators. You mentioned Amanda Cerny and like Lele, and I think another time we talked, you used to work with like the Paul brothers, and a lot of these creators are they're white or Latino, or frankly, I haven't heard you mention a lot of Asian creators. And I'm curious, sort of, you told me before we logged on, and we were just chatting before we started the call, that you feel almost like separated or alienated from your background. And I'm curious kind of what you meant by that.
I would say I had the biggest difficulty working with Asian creators. And I've worked with a lot of Asian creators before. We just haven't continued that connection, just because I just feel so unrelatable to other Asian creators, if that makes sense. I do try to make an effort every time I see a Asian creator. I'm always offering it up to creators I'm working with now. So I'm always trying to rep the Asian community. The problem I'm running into when repping the Asian community is there's not a lot of Asian social media presence. And I'm always the one to like, hey, we gotta, throw in this person, like she's an Asian, like let's, represent her. And there just isn't a ton. Do you know Linda Dong?
I don't know her personally, but I definitely love her content.
Yeah. So Linda Dong is like I would say the only Asian that I'm like really connected with.
Yeah.
She's Vietnamese, and I've always tried to keep the pulse with her. I'll like send her like Vietnamese content in Vietnamese, and that's the one person that I feel like is like my one connection to my roots.
It sounds like it's really frustrating to you that you want to connect with people of Asian descent, and you're feeling kind of like you can't, or you haven't found people who want to connect back. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's very fair to say. And I still don't know the reason why, but I'd love to ask that question because I would assume there's a lot of Asians that could benefit, that are successful, that could benefit from a community lifting them up.
Well, it sounds like you're looking for that community for yourself as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling. It's something
We're in
I've
the same
been.
boat.
Well, look, we're two people of Asian descent that are now in our own community, so we could always start one,
Dude,
and just
that's what I'm saying. Like just Southeast East Asians. So South by Southeast Asians.
South by Southeast Asians. Yeah, yeah. I wish, I wish that it was more all inclusive, encompassing, right? Like there's this AAPI community. There is something to be said about diversity and inclusion, even within some of these subsections of these communities.
It just makes so much more sense if the community actually like lifted all of us up and recognized all of us, because as Asians we're already a minority, and to have another section of minority inside the minority, it's not efficient if we're really trying to make a big difference in representation.
So, if you were starting as a creator today, what advice would you give yourself?
If I were starting as a creator today, the advice I would give to myself is to really study the creator and their content, how they're talking, what kind of content they're making. It's not just about the algorithm; it's about how you interact with your fans. Because you have to be a entertainer to be like a creator. Like really study up on like presenting information. Really study up on having a personality and having really good content to share to the audience.
Do you have any advice for other people of color who are considering becoming creators?
As a person of color, even if you have an accent, even if you're socially awkward, there's a lot of people out there that could relate to you. We're all human beings. We all have like certain traits that we could all relate to. So just like tell your story.
Yeah, I love that. Like niche is kind of mainstream now, and so
Yeah, it's not about being perfect and being like having like that news reporter persona,
right.
but
And you don't have to look like everyone else.
yeah, you don't have to look like everybody else, because there's and like you said, niche is becoming the new mainstream. So it's like I relate to this person, and I love this
on a
person
human level.
On a human level, exactly.
Yeah. Do you have an advice for anyone, people, companies, brands, other creators who want to work with creators of color on kind of how to do that in a empathetic or more effective way?
I think the creators would appreciate, and especially if it's a culture that you don't know, is to really get to know the creator first. If it's possible to have a sit down and just hang out with the creator, because that's been my approach my whole life. I've never just like hit up a creator and just like make it purely a business transaction.
Right.
I always take the effort to like get to know the creator, sit down with them. I'll always make sure we have like 30 minutes of like getting to know them before we start shooting, if it's my first time.
Yeah.
And becoming their friend. Because my whole like career is like based on friendship. If they feel like they're on the same side as you and that you're a friend and that you care, they'll care about not letting you down. So I think that's important to like build that relationship.
Do you have any advice for how white creators or white executives could support creators of color more effectively?
I think it's building your Rolodex of talent, because it's really easy to see what's in front of you, right? And I don't blame people, the white people, for like sticking to the white people, to the white people.
Yeah.
But it's just because we're not on their radar.
Yeah, it's exactly what happens. Companies that recruit from their own networks tend to have lower levels of diversity, right? Because if historically, companies are mostly white, or if historically the people who are getting promoted are mostly white, and those people are then doing the hiring and they're looking at their network, they're going to hire mostly white people. And it's a problem that I've had myself hiring people. I'm like, all right, who do I know like that can do creator partnerships or, do production or whatever. And I look at my network and like the people I came up with from WME and the people that I came up with at other companies or just like have met around town. I'm like, all right, it's mostly white people. So if I want a team that's more diverse, I have to post more broadly. I have to invest in like posting on like every major recruiting platform, and I have to invest in, talking to people of color in my network to see who they know in their networks. And like, you have to make that
Yeah.
effort. And, I think likewise, if you're recruiting creators or partnering with creators, that's what it sounds like what you're saying is you have to make the effort. You can't just go within your circles.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Have you had any mentors, either people of color or not, anyone who's kind of given you advice? And what kind of advice or what kind of feedback did you get as a person of color? I'm curious. Like,
his name is Cary Granite. He's like probably the biggest producer I know. He's produced Scary Movie, Scream, Narnia, Spy Kids, Charlotte's Web, like
wow.
our whole childhood pretty much. He told me like I was such a big threat to the industry because I know social media and I'm also Asian. So that was like a big awakening for me, Avi, when he told me that. I'm like, damn, I never thought that, I could use my roots, embrace my roots to like make it in the industry.
Do you know what he meant when he said that you're a threat to the industry because you're Asian? Like, was there like something about being Asian that makes you threatening to the industry in a good way, I think?
The industry is drifting towards being a lot more multicultural. I think people are tired of hearing the same stories from the same old. Makes me feel so uncomfortable to say, but like white people, which I love my white friends, but that's been Hollywood for you for the last however decade. So I think that Hollywood is ready to hear from different voices, and my mentor saw that in the industry, and he told me that I am a threat in that sense.
Keeping in mind that the mission of this show is to like inspire and enable other people of color who want to become creators. Do you have any advice on how a creator could potentially leverage their skin color, cultural background, or any other identity kind of factor as a way to build rapport with the audience or a way to sort of push their career forward?
So I would say just like lean into the stigma and like call it out. Like every relatable moment in your life that you think aren't relatable, I'm telling you they are relatable because everything is relatable.
Right.
And just like really lean into that kind of content.
Any last things you want to say? Anything that I didn't ask you about that you want to talk about?
I just feel really blessed to be able to talk about this as an Asian creator. I mean, this is the very first time where I had to talk about anything like this, Avi, anything as like serious as this about like,
I'm glad I'm glad that you're able to do it. And hopefully it feels good to talk about it.
Yeah. It feels really good to like be able to like finally like tell the story, and it really stimulated my brain. Like, okay, I've never really had to talk about this before. This is really cool. Like for me to explore. So thanks for the opportunity.
I really enjoyed the conversation. We got pretty deep, and I'm excited to share it with people. And let's see if we can get you connected to more Asian creators and get you into the community here. But in the meantime, is there anything you want to promote? Anything you want to shout out?
I guess just follow me on my Instagram. Me and my partner created the first production company for creators.
Yeah, Room 1041, awesome business. If you're looking for production help, definitely they're people to go to.
And I'm making a movie next year, so just follow me on IG. Stay tuned for that.
Can you share any details about the movie?
It's going to be about the youth's streetwear culture.
Oh, awesome. Well, super looking forward to that. Thanks again for coming on, Stro. And, great chatting with you.
Avi, thank you so much.
Well, that was a really interesting conversation. First off, he's had this amazing, incredible, and inspiring experience, right? Like his parents were refugees. He was born in a refugee camp and came to first Canada and then eventually the US, and is sort of making his way, making his fortune, working with some of the biggest creators in the world. I mean, that's amazing. Thanks for listening to Creators of Color, or watching it if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify. Creators of Color is created, produced, and hosted by myself, Avi Gandhi, executive produced by Trenton Barboza, edited by Eric Abel. Theme song is written and performed by Justine Lightling. Thank you to the LinkedIn Accelerator program for getting this podcast off the ground with funding and resources and mentorship. Thank you for watching or listening. If you liked this conversation and you want to support us and keep us going, please leave a comment, leave a review, subscribe or follow on whatever platform you're on, and share with a friend. The more people that listen, the more we can spread the word, and the more creators of color or aspiring creators of color we can inspire and enable to pursue their dreams. All right. Thanks so much.